the effort, you open your legs.
Again, then you know what you're doing. You got to fucking starfish. Then we've talked about starfishing on this podcast. I am not a motherfucking starfish.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down to Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash Hogleg Daniels.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatthemovies.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thanks so much for listening. If you haven't already, press the subscribe button and share it with a friend. That's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, if you haven't already, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Lovecraft Country, Game of Thrones, True Detective, and Watchmen. Find all that information and past episodes at shatontv.com. And finally, to hang out with us live all week long, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatthemovies.com/Twitch, where we play video games, host watch parties, and have an upcoming special on June 25th. We'll be doing Shat on Jeopardy, me versus Big D versus Ash, for your listening and viewing enjoyment. Now, all that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing today?
So, Gene, one of my favorite things about doing this podcast are the connections we make with people, and we learn a little bit about the world. So this week, we got a commission from one of our listeners in Australia who said that he does a lot of driving. He's an agricultural consultant in regional Australia. I had no idea what the hell that was, so I had to do some research. And regional Australia includes all the towns, small cities, and areas that lie between major cities: Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth, and the other two. So I was very happy when Lachlan H. wrote us and said he wanted to, for some reason, commission the 1991 American action biker film, Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man.
Lachlan wrote in and said, "Hi guys, been a loyal listener for a while now. Your podcast makes me laugh on my long drives in regional Australia where I work as an agricultural consultant. The reason why I commissioned Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man is that to me, it is very much a sentimental and beer drinking favorite for my friends and me. I first watched this movie when I was a child late at night when it came on after Letterman had finished and have loved it ever since. I then introduced it to a few friends of mine at my end of high school trip almost 15 years ago. Other parts of the movie that I find interesting is that it was released in 1991 when the mainstream action megastars Stallone, Schwarzenegger, Van Damme, and Seagal were at their career peaks. However, this movie took an unconventional turn and casted Rourke and Johnson, who are not traditional action megastars. Their on-screen chemistry works, however, both suffered a career downturn not long after this movie was released. The movie is a great balance of action and comedy, which I think is harder to pull off than most people think. True Lies does this perfectly. The storyline is unique and easy to follow, plus it has a killer soundtrack and great quotes. Have fun watching, and please don't go too hard on your review. I know, it's no Shawshank Redemption. Happy hunting, Lachlan H.
I mean, Lachlan, to be honest, Shawshank Redemption is no Shawshank Redemption. No. Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man is a 1991 American action biker film starring Mickey Rourke and Don Johnson, with a supporting cast including Chelsea Field, Daniel Baldwin, Giancarlo Esposito, Tom Sizemore, and Vanessa Williams. It's directed by Simon Windsor from a screenplay by Don Michael Paul. The film was a critical and financial failure, grossing just $7 million at the domestic box office against an estimated budget of $23 million. So Big D, Ash, we always ask where you were and what your memories are of the movie we're covering. Ash, we'll start with you. What are your memories of Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man?
So I had never heard of this movie. I looked at the poster, and for weeks now, I've thought that this was a Bruce Willis movie. Because Mickey Rourke looks just like Bruce Willis on the cover of this movie poster. But after reading about it, I got really excited about watching it. And I feel like this is something I should have seen a really long time ago. Like that this should be like a massive cult classic that got recommended to me by the people I'm friends with. But it never happened. And thanks, Lachlan, because I really like this one.
I'm glad I'm not alone in that, Ash, with the Bruce Willis thing, because surprise, I mixed Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man up with Hudson Hawk. And yes, even looking at the movie posters, I thought Mickey Rourke was Bruce Willis and Don Johnson was Kurt Russell. So I don't know if that's just the age I'm hitting now. And after hearing last week's contest, which, by the way, if you guys haven't entered it yet, until June 20th, we're doing a contest where Big D's mom on the last episode of Shat the Movies described 5 movies and 5 actors. And then you're supposed to guess at shatthemovies.com/contest which movies and actors she was talking about. I'm feeling very much like Big D's mom right now. But in my defense, Hudson Hawk and Harley Davidson, the Marlboro Man, came out in the same year. And as Ash mentioned, Bruce Willis and Mickey Rourke look a lot alike in these posters. So, easy mistake, even though they're set in completely different decades.
Okay. We're watching Harley Davidson, the Marlboro Man, right? That's the movie we're doing tonight?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listening to you guys describe it and the letter from Lachlan, there's some disconnect in my mind. Was this a comedy?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
I mean, in the sense that Schwarzenegger movies are comedies.
Yeah.
It's an action movie that's meant to make you laugh. Yeah.
But it doesn't say action comedy. It says action biker film. That's how they describe that.
Sorry, Wikipedia didn't catch the comedy part. Anyway, Big D, hit that trailer.
Harley Marlboro. If you want to ride their road, you gotta know the rules. Never play cowboy.
School's out, boys.
In a room full of Indians.
It's better to be dead and cool than alive and uncool.
Never go into a bar
I can't watch this.
unless you're willing to get smashed.
Feeling pretty good up to there.
Never ride a Brahma bull
Strap on your seatbelt, get ready to fly.
when you can take a bus.
Does that look like the work of 2 bit hoods?
Yeah, pros would have used my keys.
Never rob a bank
Get back what's mine and kill these men, okay?
run by bigger crooks than you.
Hey man, that's what friendship's all about.
Never resist an arresting officer.
Okay, cowboy, let's blow off some steam.
We gotta talk to the man upstairs.
Stay on my tail.
No problem.
Never start at the bottom when you want the man on top. Never dive from the 20th floor
We're gonna jump.
I hate you for this, Harley.
unless the pool is full.
You guys are a piece of work.
Mickey Rourke, Don Johnson, Harley Davidson, and the Marlboro Man.
Can't believe you shot me.
Harley Davidson reconnects with his old friend Robert Lee Marlboro Man Edison at their old haunt, Rock and Roll Bar and Grill. The bar has fallen on hard times, and the Great Trust Bank has threatened foreclosure. Harley and Robert convince Jack, who's angry with Harley over an affair Harley had with Jack's now wife, to help them rob one of the bank's armored cars. The trio are intercepted by a group of security agents, but escape to discover the loot they stole from the van contains a new experimental drug called Crystal Dream.
So I'm really big on how we meet a character, especially when it's like the entire movie is dependent on that character and the audience relating to them. And this is one of those films. And I think the character introduction, it kind of makes or breaks whether or not that character is going to become somebody iconic. Like the perfect one I think of is like Dr. Frankenfurter's introduction in Rocky Horror. Like nothing is more iconic than the way that, he enters the room. And I have to tell you, I was super impressed with the way that they introduce Harley in this movie. And so if you've not seen it, he's in this red silhouette He looks great. Mickey Rourke is like very much in his prime, baby faced. You got Bon Jovi playing in the background. And then all of a sudden, there's this beautiful naked lady that sits up. He acknowledges her. She acknowledges him. He gives a smoky smolder and then just walks out of the room. And like, there's absolutely no context to it whatsoever. But it's fantastic. And I was sold from the get-go on who Harley was.
Yeah, and they're in this like post-apocalyptic like roadside motel, and he just fucking leaves the door open. Yeah, like, our business has concluded. Good day.
Yeah, the beginning of the movie has so much promise. She goes out in the balcony, it looks at him wistfully as he drives away. I'm like, wow, what's going on here? And then the movie throws me another curve. It gets really, really artsy. The opening like credits, yes, it was amateurish, but they tried to be artsy. The camera kind of focuses on Harley's chrome wheels, and then it fades into the blades of like one of the wind turbines. And there's this montage of like street signs as he's on his journey. I picture Gene driving west, through the desert. And the movie is trying to be artsy, and I'm liking where it's going.
Listen, I love all two-wheeled vehicles. Like, I'll ride anything with two wheels. I don't care. But I fucking hate Harleys, and I hated how much time they spent on this bike. So for those who don't know, in America, the most popular style of motorcycle is a cruiser. And I kind of get why Americans would like cruisers. They're low to the ground. They're very good at going in a straight line. And they have like this totally like cheeseball aesthetic that tasteless Americans drool over. But they make fucking zero sense as far as what you want out of a motorcycle. So motorcycles, you should be able to stand on the pegs. So you make your body basically its own suspension. So when you're going through like rough terrain or gravel or stuff like that, you'll be okay. Meanwhile, you can't stand on the pegs on a Harley. If you try to lean too hard and take advantage of the motorcycle's ability to lean, you scrape your fucking pegs because they can't do that. Some of them still have drum brakes on the back in an era when we have disc brakes and anti-lock brake systems, and their engines are fucking dinosaurs. Like, people love that. It's an inefficient shit engine. Harley in this movie rides this chopper with like no rear suspension. His ass would break off after 30 miles of riding. And then they have the fucking audacity to make fun of Marlboro Man's bike because it's Japanese. Well, he's riding a fucking Kawasaki KZ1000P, which is lighter, faster than a Harley, and has rear disc brakes. A Harley's a fucking rolling ornament.
Okay, I'm going to start this off by saying one of two things. One day, when I become grown up and I have enough money, I want to buy like an early 90s Harley Fat Boy, like from Terminator 2.
No.
I've always wanted that bike. I've loved it. So I used to ride with my father. I don't now. After I watched somebody put the bike down and their head opened. So I want people to know that. I'm not a bike hater, but I agree totally with what you're saying, Gene. I think Harleys with aftermarket exhaust, the dum, 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 and they pull up to the traffic light. That person is screaming, "Look at me! I'm cool! Look at me!" It is a desperate need for attention and validation. A normal Harley, I'm completely fine with. But when you make it so loud that it's almost stalling out, that's not about the ride. That's about people looking at you.
I don't know. I've never understood motorcycles. I think that they're really fucking stupid. I think most people look like complete idiots on them, especially the ones where like their hands have to be up here while they're riding, like way up by their face.
For those at home, Ash is imitating ape hangers with her arms is what she's doing.
Yeah, looks stupid. I've never been on a motorcycle. Totally fine. I've been on a Vespa. I think Vespas are cool, but I've never been on a motorcycle, and I'm okay with that. Now, Michael in Grease 2,
of course,
he looks pretty badass. But other than that, I don't know. And the giant ones, like in this movie, I think they're the absolute worst, for sure.
And we start to see a pattern in Harley Davidson, the Marlboro Man, of like, if it's the flashiest, dumbest American thing, they'll do it. And I understand like butterfly knives are not an American invention, but the way they're used in American film, they are basically the Harley Davidsons of the knife world. So a dude pulls a knife on Marlboro at a bar, and it's a butterfly knife. It just makes a bunch of fucking noise. It's super flashy, and it's like super complicated, but they have no tactical advantage. Like, at all. And I'm just like, and so the movie's starting to really signal to us at this point that it's like, hope you like flashy shit. If it's orange leathers or a Harley Davidson with a bunch of chopped off parts or fucking butterfly knives, you're going to get a lot of it for the next hour and a half.
But I think this was a 90s thing, a 90s and 80s film. But I went back and looked at it. They're used in a lot of movies. I think because it takes time. It's like unsheathing like a katana. Whoa, he means business. So I went and looked. They did it in Falling Down. Red Dawn has one. Action Jackson, The Outsiders, Lethal Weapon 4. The Karate Kid 2 famously has one. Face Off, The Mummy, The Goonies, just to name a few. So yes, it's stupid. It's tactically inefficient. But as a kid, I wanted one of those and Ninja Stars. That would have made a happy fat kid.
Well, the bank's head of security, Alexander, is ordered by CEO Chance Wilder, played by Tom Sizemore, to recover the stolen drugs and kill the thieves. Meanwhile, Robert is pulled over by a motorcycle cop, his ex-lover, Virginia Slim, and Robert learns she's engaged. Robert and Harley go to the bank's headquarters and demand $2.5 million in exchange for the drugs. Alexander shows up at an airplane graveyard with the money, but Marlboro is suspicious of the ease of the exchange. Suddenly, Alexander and his men show up and kill the bar owner and Harley and Marlboro's crew.
As this movie is ridiculous, it's telling a story for people who haven't seen it. It came out in 91, but it's telling you about the world in 1996. And the best that they do to build this world is we have $3.99 gas, the ozone layer is depleted, there's constant smog, future cars have barcode license plates, which are highly impractical, and bad guys walk around in these rubber like Matrix trench coats. Burbank, California is now a giant airport, and the kids are using Crystal Dream in their eyes. For a movie that's supposed to be funny, I kept thinking about Demolition Man. Now, granted, Demolition Man is way in the future, but they did the whole Taco Bell as a fancy restaurant. They did the people living underground. I wish they'd taken the chance, other than a bar still being open with an airplane in it. There's nothing that made me say, wow, this is kind of interesting. Why didn't they make an effort?
See, I totally disagree. I think the most powerful future movies are the ones that exaggerate what's there, but they do it in a really slick way. So like, for example, and I know you guys don't like this movie, but Blade Runner. I mean, Blade Runner does that really well. It does like the overcrowding, and it does, the billboards and the signs and the advertisements. Minority Report is another one, when he's walking through that mall and the Gap people tell him what size he needs. Like, you could see that happening in the very near future. And I think that's what future movies have to do. They can't get too weird, or it doesn't feel like it's something you're able to relate to.
I'd say that this is closer to the future than, let's say, Demolition Man or Back to the Future Part 2. In this case, I mean, shit, $3.99 gas sounds about right. Mm-hmm. But most of the rest of the world being roughly the same sounds about right.
Yeah, and you mentioned drugs, right? I have always loved in movies like this when there's a plot line about the new designer drug. And so in this one, your name, your concept, it's pretty run of the mill. And I think it's typical in your basic future movie fashion that these new designer drugs are the bad news, right? That this is your big plot point, that the kids have gotten their hands on a drug that's going to kill them. And so I actually just watched a really interesting movie recently with Anthony Mackie and Jamie Dornan called Synchronic. That's very similar to this, where there's like a drug that if you take it, you travel to the past for a certain amount of time, and people get like stabbed by Mayans and, get trapped in swamps. And it's actually a really great movie. And that it works in that movie because the entire plot is about exploring the drug itself. This is like a copy type thing where it's, it's a bad drug and don't put it in your eyes, guys. And I don't know. I thought that was kind of lame.
But I wish I had seen it. Other than that brick of whatever it was, I don't want it to go into like completely about the drugs, but I would have liked to have seen a junkie here or there.
Oh, no.
Junkie eye drop.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I have noticed. I was actually glad they didn't go there, because it's going to be like, whoa, it's the 90s. We're going to show you something trippy. Look at this crazy trip. And they'd be like, let's use some CGI.
Like in Strange Days. We would have had a Strange Days moment.
Right. Not that I don't think there's anything wrong with Strange Days. But we also saw this in Watchmen. You had nostalgia. And by the way, as the days go on since we did review Watchmen on Shat on TV, I think everyone's starting to realize what a good show it was, that just somehow didn't get the praise it deserved. If you haven't checked it out, Watchmen, go watch it and then listen to the podcast. But back to Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man. One thing that really stands out in this movie is the characters. They're pretty fantastic. Harley and Marlboro's crew has some serious representation in it. We got Big John Studd, the wrestler, as Jack Daniels. Lulu Daniels is played by singer Vanessa Williams, and she looks amazing. One of the guys in the crew, Jose Cuervo, he uses sign language. You got Julius Harris as the bar owner. And of course, Giancarlo Esposito, which we talked about before from Breaking Bad. And I swear I've never noticed him before Breaking Bad, but now I see him in everything, like Maximum Overdrive and this. He just keeps popping up in all of our fun movies.
Yeah, and this is one of the part of the movies I really did like. I thought there was a good chemistry. I thought the friendships and the history that they had, you could see it. And one of the things about their relationships, I think, rings very true. Guys, when guys have a problem with each other, I think that they deal with it very differently than women. I find that, well, in the movie, just so you know, so Harley comes back and Harley sees his old friend Jack Daniels, and Jack Daniels is upset because Harley had made a pass at his now wife. They end up fighting. They get thrown out of a window. They hit each other a couple times. And you know what? They hug it out and they say, hey, we're good. I find that women hold grudges much longer, and that this is very true to the way guys act. Guys usually will air their differences. Maybe they throw a couple punches and then they move on with themselves.
I don't know. I think it's a really overgeneralization about like the difference between the way guys handle things and girls handle things, because I just don't see how hitting someone is a better way to solve things, right? Like, I don't understand how that's the solution. And I think there are things in between, like violence between guys and grudge holding, that people accuse women of doing. And I think it's called adulthood and like being grown up and mature. But I just hate this whole like, guys deal with it like this because boys will be boys and boys are better.
No, I don't think they're better. I just think they're not as passive aggressive. I think
that's a complete overgeneralization. I know a lot of passive aggressive dudes.
Well, most guys I've known, if they don't like you, they're not going to play nice. But a lot of women I've known, even Vanessa does it. There's people who I know she can't stand, and when the people come in, oh, hi, how you doing? I'm like, how do you do it? I don't. So maybe it's a generalization, but it's just in this movie, I like the way that they portrayed that they could just get over it really quickly, and it wasn't anything to destroy their friendship over.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably have a working dialogue with Roger now if he just gotten it out of the way, gotten it over. But somebody wouldn't let us. Somebody says violence is always wrong.
No, if you're both willing, I think it would be a great fundraiser. I would pay for like big boxing gloves. I would love to watch that if it was agreed to.
I mean, I don't know that Harley was willing in this scenario. He didn't seem very jacked about fighting Big John Studd.
That's true. Very true.
But this movie is a comic book, and that's why the violence works, because comic book readers instantly will recognize this style of storytelling, the setup of the movie. The names are brand names, and it seems like lazy writing, but it's a shortcut. It instantly gives you a universal reference point for the character. Harley is a Harley riding guy. He's Harley Davidson. He's got his motorcycle and his leathers, and he's a road man. He's out there in the American, open road, being free. And Marlboro Man, he's a cowboy. He's got cowboy ideals. And Jack Daniels is a big, drunk, tough guy. It works. It makes it very, very simple to understand who's what. Jose Cuervo, okay, whatever. But the caper, as you mentioned, Big D, is the least logical solution to the problem. That's how comic books work. They'll be like, we have this problem. You're like, oh, there's a very easy solution here. They're like, oh, no, we're not going to do that at all. We're going to do this other thing. And each character has a very easy to remember strength and a very easy to remember weakness. Personalities are all over the top. This is a graphic novel come to life. And if you appreciate it that way, it's a pretty damn good movie.
Why the fuck didn't we have this conversation before I watched the movie?
You would have been supposed to come to your own conclusions.
I am. And now I'm feeling like I completely missed it.
Mm-hmm.
I was miserable the whole time. And now I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I was taking it too literal.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll be very honest. I had not made that connection until I read Jean's notes for the movie. And I think it's brilliant because like in comic books, like what you're saying, there's this little moment of introduction for each character. They get their little bitty moment in the sun and you meet them, you meet their costume even. It's not a superhero costume, but they've all got a get up that they wear in this film. And then you understand their purpose, within the first 3 minutes of them being on film. And I think by this point in the movie, I was loving it. I thought it was fantastic and I couldn't figure out why. But, I've been reading comic books since I knew how to read. And I'm thinking that might be why, because you're completely right, Gene. This is exactly like one.
I'm going to spend the rest of the evening thinking about why comic book characters give themselves a name that tells you what they do.
Yeah.
You think you wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, Harley and Marlboro retreat to the nearby airport and hide in a baggage compartment of a plane. They escape to Las Vegas only to be tracked down by Alexander. The two escape to the hotel's roof and jump off into a swimming pool. Harley finds out that they've been tracked with a device hidden in a dollar coin given to them by Alexander. The two hop a freight train headed east after deactivating the tracker, but Marlboro leaves after telling Harley that they owe it to the dead friends that helped them to go back to LA and settle things. Harley refuses to go, and Marlboro jumps off the train.
So at this point in the film, I want to address another Baldwin. I feel like we've gotten a lot of Baldwins lately on this podcast, and I just feel so badly for Daniel Baldwin, just in general in life. I think that it's got to be so hard to be like the forgotten or the less attractive or less famous of these big sibling groups. And the Baldwins were huge at this point in time. And it's almost like there's like a support group for him. Like there's that scene, those of you who have kids, there's that scene in Toy Story 3 where it's like the little bonus movies where you get to watch like the Happy Meal toys. They all have a support group because nobody wants them. I feel like there's got to be a support group for the people that are the Daniel Baldwins of the world. And he joins the Ashley Hemsworths and the Noah Cyruses and the Kevin Jonases that it's just got to suck to be.
I have no clue who any of those people are.
Yes, you do. You know who Ashley Hemsworth is. He's in Westworld.
Thank you. And I know you
That's
know
a different one?
Yeah, that's not Chris or the other hot one.
That's
Liam?
Yes.
That's not him. He's the weirdly like squatty one. And then Noah Cyrus is Miley Cyrus's sibling. And Kevin Jonas is the least attractive of the just in general unattractive Jonas brothers.
Yeah, I kind of feel bad. You imagine that like Thanksgiving in the Baldwin house. He's got to be sitting there kind of like pissed off, just a little angry, looking at his brothers and how successful they were.
Is he the dad of the kid that married Justin Bieber? Because then like you really fucking have a terrible life.
I didn't even make that connection.
I think that's his kid.
Haley?
Yeah. How do you know her name?
Oh, I'm big into what's going on in Hollywood.
Haley Bieber.
I just follow their relationship. Biebs is on my running mix on my Spotify, so I'm a big fan. But Gene, now that I'm taking your logic and I'm applying it to what I had originally thought was a negative about the movie, I'm going to kind of spin it a little bit. I hated the dialogue. They were saying things that were all like these catchphrases. But since it was a comic, I will now look at them a little different. I'm going to read you some of the dialogue that I just cringed at originally, but now I'm like, it makes sense. If there was a god, I'd go and hang out with them. Older bulls, stiffer the horns. Some business is better left unfinished. It's better to be dead and cool than alive and uncool. Guns are made to be shot, not thrown. If being alive means living on the run, God damn it, then I don't want it. And then Harley, in the middle of a shootout, does he scream like, oh, die, die? He yells, fuck, shit, piss. Horse shit is a bear's ass. That's actual dialogue from the movie that now I'm somewhat seeing the brilliance in.
Well, yeah, and there's other really good moments, like that breakup scene with Robert where she tells him that he isn't welcome there anymore after they like get together one last time. I mean, I think that was great. And I think the delivery of every line you just said was kind of perfect.
Yeah, the King Bee used to invite me to the comic shop on Wednesdays when all the new books would come in, and everyone would sit around and, read their graphic novels, their books kind of to themselves. And then you would have these moments where you're like, and you show, and it's always a single panel with one of these lines on it. And it works because it's cool when it's just this isolated moment. Mm-hmm. And I think there's nothing better to scream during a gunfight than fuck, shit, piss, horse shit in a bear's ass.
I don't know. And again, like now another thing, I hated the fact that it seemed like the movie was missing transitions. You would get a scene like, for example, where they jump off of a hotel into the pool. We see they survive. Boom, smash cut. They're on a train. In the sense of a movie, I was like, what's going on? How did they get there? But if it's a comic, you only have a set amount of panels. you're not going to waste panels on them going from scene to scene. So I'm starting to kind of go from it was a Cliff Notes version of a movie to now it was actually a stylized version of a comic.
See, I totally disagree with you there, though, because I don't feel like the movie was missing scenes. Like, there weren't scenes that I missed because they spent a good amount of time crafting these little small moments. You know, you've got the Marlboro thing where he's taping his shoes constantly, and the whole scene where Harley can't pay for breakfast. And I don't know, like, we watch a lot of movies and we critique them in very specific ways. And one of the things that we critique a lot is whether or not the world is like full, whether or not the characters feel like they are grounded in a world that's created for that movie. And I think they spend enough time doing that here. And it's a fun and it's an interesting world. And I thought the script was completely intentional.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't need to see people shit or take cab rides through Vegas. I don't need to know what happened to dead bodies. Like, if you want to see a version of Lord of the Rings where they've got to cart the orc bodies out of Helm's Deep for an hour, that's fine. But you can just go ahead and fast forward to the next battle for me.
I mean, that's probably in the director's cut. That's 4 hours and 20 minutes long. So,
and that's why I will not be showing it during my Lord of the Rings marathon, August 8th.
Which means you're not watching the real one, but it's okay.
Harley has a change of heart and catches up with Marlboro, and they form a plan to ambush Alexander, reactivating the tracker and the coin. Alexander traces them to the airplane graveyard and a gunfight ensues. Marlboro kills both of Alexander's 2 remaining men, but Alexander catches Marlboro and holds him hostage. Harley tries to shoot Alexander and misses, hitting Marlboro. Harley finally summons up the aim to hit Alexander, and the two manage to kill him.
So, you know, Big D, you talked about like dialogue and about transitions. I can say that hopefully one thing that you agree with is that the sets in this movie were actually really fun. Like the sets and the costumes were really well selected. I mean, the whole shootout in the airfield, like the plane graveyard, I thought was great. I know you made fun of like the Matrix style trench coat, but Alexander's long leather coat I thought was pretty badass and came way before the Matrix. And I don't mean, Gene just gave me a crazy look. I don't mean badass like I want to wear it out in public. I just mean like I thought he looked cool for a bad guy in a movie like this. And like I already talked about with Marlboro's little, you know, boots and Harley's, you know, glasses and the hats, it was all pretty unique. And I'm really surprised after watching this, and it must be because it did so shitty at the box office, but this felt like it should have been a series. Like there should have been like multiple Harley movies, and maybe it's like Harley Davidson and Jose Cuervo and Harley Davidson and Virginia Slim. Like it's not always the Marlboro Man, but I'm really shocked that this wasn't, you know, a bigger deal.
Yeah, the set was fun. The shootout itself was fun. I haven't enjoyed a shootout this much since Way of the Gun, which, by the way, if you guys haven't seen it, Way of the Gun is a fantastic movie. And the shootout in it, it's like in this little courtyard, and it's absolutely fantastic to watch, even if you don't watch the whole movie. In my opinion, Way of the Gun is a perfect modern Western. I think Harley Davidson, the Marlboro Man, comes close to that. I was grinning the whole time. And the only complaint I had up until this part of the movie was that they never fucking shoot anybody and kill them. I'm like, yeah, they've got armor. They've got these big jackets. Shoot them in their fucking heads. We see Marlboro shooting guns out of people's hands. So we're like, okay, clearly he's got good aim. Why are they having such a hard time killing 5 dudes standing out in the open? So I really enjoyed that reveal later in the movie that Harley's a terrible aim, and neither one of our heroes wanted to shoot anyone in anger or kill them, which is just a great little fact.
But it's like this is an A-Team episode. In A-Team, I vividly remember there was a helicopter that crashes into a mountain, and they couldn't show anybody dying. So, like, you see them 30 seconds later, and all the crew is like coming out of the burning wreckage. The movie felt like it didn't want to take that step where it would have made it, I think, something better. We get these 4 bad guys in the trench coats. And we're kind of led to believe maybe they have some superpowers. Maybe there's some future enhancements to them. They don't go anywhere with that. They just walk strange. They speak like robots. But they even mentioned it in the movie. They say, are they enhanced? Oh, those bastards are bulletproof. And then we hear one throwaway line about lightweight Japanese Kevlar. Why didn't they at least develop something about these bad guys so that Harley and the Marlboro Man had like a foe?
But that's the funny part about it, is that their foe was their own kindness. Like, they didn't want to kill anybody. They were just trying to... So you think it was intentional, not ineptitude? Yeah. No, they're saying it flat out.
Agreed.
They had this whole conversation. It's like, I never want to shoot anybody in anger or kill, but I think we're going to have to. Like they had a fucking conversation about it, which makes it so funny that the whole movie, the problem was just that they didn't want to kill anybody. And they take that comedy, you're asking if it was a comedy a step further, where they're talking about the cost of ammunition during the gunfight. And I just want to send a thank you to Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man for addressing the cost of ammunition, because in all the movies that we've watched, no one ever talks about this. Like, you always see heroes that are dead broke. They live in a sewer somewhere. They're like fucking living in a broke down apartment, and they're rattling off like 1,000 rounds in one shoot at. And I'm wondering, like, where do they get their ammo? How do they pay for it? I have separate sets of ammunition for business and pleasure, right? There's your target shooting set, then your home defense set. And I was wondering, Big D, like, how much money worth of ordnance and ammunition would you say an infantryman fires off, all told, in like an average year?
Well, I was a 12 Bravo, so I was combat engineer. So we would have a squad attached to a company of infantry. But I really don't know. I ran actually the range at West Point in the summer after September 11th. You could request anything and they would give it to you. So the only thing they seem to really care about is policing brass. Is that once you've shot it, you actually had to come back and weigh it to make sure. And I don't know if that was because of money, because of the cost of the brass, or whatever they did with it. But now C4, I remember that was a bitch to get. We would used to train with shit that was like from fucking Vietnam and World War II. The shit was like hard as a rock. But other than that, I mean, I don't think that money was ever a consideration. Javelins and like AT4s, they were a little harder to get. But fucking rounds, you're never short of those.
So you just sat there and fired weapons and never did the math on like how much you were blasting away?
No. The only fun thing we did at that West Point range was whenever a cadet would have rounds left over after whatever their time was, we used to take their rounds, and you couldn't let them come out of the hole with the rounds. So we would take a knee and we said, okay, let's all shoot at the lane 8-9 marker, the farthest one in the range. And we did this for the summer. At the end of the summer, the range fucking cadre, the guy who ran the actual range, who actually did the maintenance, he comes running down. He's like, which one of you motherfuckers has been shooting my lane markers? And he pulls it up, and we had shredded this beautiful, expensive lane marker that he had made just because we'd been shooting rounds at it, whatever was left over after each round of these cadets shooting. But cost was never an issue.
Tax dollars at work.
Yes.
Well, the duo bribe Alexander's helicopter pilot into taking them to Wilder's office. Wilder is unwilling to strike a deal with them and orders his men to kill them. The pilot, paid off by Harley and Marlboro, swoops in and opens fire, killing Wilder's thugs. Marlboro begins to beat Wilder until Wilder dangles out of the window of his office, holding onto Marlboro's disintegrating cowboy boot. Harley helps him out. The boot comes apart, and Wilder falls to the street. Marlboro and Harley part ways at a rodeo where Marlboro is riding a bull. As Harley rides away, he picks up a beautiful hitchhiker.
So does anybody else get really depressed when you see Tom Sizemore in any film where he's young and his life's not destroyed, and you think about the potential, because he was a really good actor. And I don't know if I remember seeing a movie with Tom Sizemore this young, but like he was like a really like good looking guy. And I don't think I ever realized that he at one point in his life looked completely unburdened, and he does here. And I don't know. I just think it's a total waste.
Yeah. And Tom Sizemore and Mickey Rourke are friends in real life, and both of them made a real mess of their lives since filming Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man. And I finally understood after seeing this movie why these two are Hollywood stars. And Don Johnson, I mean, this guy's a fucking king. Why he wasn't in a million movies, I'll never know.
Yeah, Tom Sizemore, I mean, he was a mess. I mean, famously, Spielberg gave him a chance to resurrect his career with Saving Private Ryan, and they had to drug test him on the set, if I remember correctly. But I take it, Ashley, you've never seen the Tom Sizemore sex tape?
No, I have not.
You can't unsee this. It involves him extremely sweaty. It's like a hotel room with some ladies, and it's everything you imagine it could be, and you can't unsee it. But Mickey Rourke, I think, yeah, he's turned his life around, and he became relevant again with The Wrestler. But he was a good-looking guy, and he was dating, I mean, the most attractive women out there. He was a sex symbol. At what point do you stop doing the surgeries? He looks like the fucking guy from the movie Mask. Like his face is like stretched. It looks really strange. Why doesn't anybody around him tell him stop? Mickey, just stop.
I think, like you guys were talking about with all the Hollywood royalty and how all these people are like connected and stuff, I think you just enter this weird fucking bubble, man, where it's like you just don't know like what's normal anymore. I mean, think about just I know Big D, you haven't been there, but when you visit LA, the whole place feels like something's very fucking wrong. And as an outsider, that's just a guy visiting, just driving through, right? I imagine if you live in that for long enough, like shit just gets way out of hand.
So I have to talk about this ending. It went on really, really long. There were like multiple steps to it. We get, I'm not going to shoot you because you're unarmed. Then we're going to fight. My dad said, blah, blah, blah. The helicopter comes up and shoots out like only the bad guys. And then we end it with the obvious fucking Chekhov's broken boot. Everybody had to see this coming. You had to see that at the end of the movie, we were going to get the answer to those fucking boots. And of course, it comes back to save them. That I thought was a bit predictable.
Yeah, I'll give you that. This end scene was like, I felt like I was playing a Nintendo video game, right?
Yeah, the different
like,
bosses.
okay, you got to the final boss, and they're just talking forever. And like their good nature, nature kind of got a little bit annoying at this point. Like, he's got security. He's not just going to sign off on that. And I get why maybe Marlboro had a sense of justice there, but I'm surprised that Harley didn't say just, fuck this. So Big D, I'll give you that one, and that will factor into my score. Fair point. And speaking of Shat scores, now is the time we give our wipe score for Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man. Wipe score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie would take to get off your respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is a young, baby-faced, chiseled Mickey Rourke in his prime. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster. It is a Tom Sizemore sex tape. We'll start with you, Ash. What is your wipe score for Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man?
So I really like this movie. I think I've been pretty clear about that the entire episode. I thought it was really entertaining. I think that Mickey Rourke, he was absolutely fantastic in it. Don Johnson is precious, and he made me actually feel things, which I didn't expect in this movie. I thought the action was fun. It was well paced. The plot was quick. It was enjoyable. The running time kind of just flew by. And I really love the style of it and the characters, which thanks to Gene, I understand why, because it's like these little, soundbitey comic book moments. And I have to say, this is a movie I would totally watch again. I think it is way better than average, and I'm giving it 1.5 wipes.
It's fucking high.
All right, that's 1.5 wipes from Ash. I agree, Ash. This movie is corny, but it's incredibly entertaining. Don Johnson has got to be one of the most charming and underrated actor of our lifetimes. We've seen him make sort of resurgence in his career, but it's really a shame that he didn't do more in his prime. The action was fun. The plot was just enough to resemble a story, while really just letting us enjoy the characters. And for that, I'm going to go half a wipe better and say this is a 1 wipe movie.
You both are fucking crazy. You both have been doing the crystal dream. You're completely wrong. So when the movie starts out, like I said, I was optimistic. We get Bon Jovi, Wanted Dead or Alive, that opening credit. That's the best part of the movie, though. Other movies, because during this time, it was obvious they tried to say, let's pair 2 guys, 2 stars, whether they're action stars or whatever. Let's do Tango and Cash. Let's get Kurt Russell and Sylvester Stallone. Or Demolition Man, we're going to get Wesley Snipes and we're going to get Stallone again. I think, though, the difference is those 2 had some chemistry. There was charisma in the characters. I think that Johnson and Rourke, yeah, they're both credible actors, but together I didn't think they quite worked. I understand what they were trying for, but just because we're saying it's like a comic book, it doesn't mean it's a good comic book. We've talked about movies like The Last Action Hero. We thought was really funny. It mixed the comedy and the action in a way that was enjoyable. For me, this was not enjoyable. I wanted it to stop. And even now I understand the movie a little bit better, what they were going for. I didn't think it worked. I didn't like the characters. I didn't think it was funny. I thought it was pretty bad. I mean, I was going to give it a 4.5, but I think a 4 is fair. There's a reason it made $7 million. There's a reason they couldn't market it correctly. And there's a reason that most people haven't seen it. It's because it's bad. This is a 4 wipe movie.
All right, 4 wipes from Big D, 1 wipe from me, and 1.5 wipes from Ash gives us a average wipe score of 2.16 wipes repeating for Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man.
So Gene, with a score of 2.166 wipes, that now puts Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man tied in the 128 spot with Roadhouse, Poltergeist, Ghostbusters, Rambo 2, Top Gun, Pretty Woman, L.A. Story, Crocodile Dundee, and Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
That's completely perfect. This is Crocodile Dundee. This is those type Poltergeist. This is as enjoyable as Poltergeist is. I think that's a absolutely perfect placement for this movie, even though your score was cuckoo.
I
Big
don't know
D.
about that. But I did do something interesting that we'll share later on at some future time. I went back and added to it's not on the website, but I did this in my Excel spreadsheet. I added the categories or the movie genre. So we could do, what are the top 50 comedies?
Ooh.
What are the top actions? So I'm just figuring out a way on the front end to sort them so that
But
we
what
could
about
actually
the action comedy?
then you would select both categories, because I gave it the multiple categories of whatever IMDb had. So you could say, what is the action comedy? What is the musical comedy? What is the romantic comedy? You could do it all. And that's coming in the future of Shat the Movies Online.
What did you put Student Bodies as?
I didn't. I told you I picked
Shitty.
whatever IMDb did. I think that was a comedy. I don't know what else.
Just shitty.
Yeah, shitty.
Five Wiper. It's its own category.
It's pretty bad.
All right, Ash, Big D, that wraps it up for Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man. We do have some email from Corey.
Hi, longtime listener, first time emailer. I went back and started listening to the old episodes for movies I haven't seen or watched once 25 years ago. During either the first Halloween or Friday the 13th episode, Gene and Carrie talked down about, if not made fun of, a situation I've been dealing with the last 4 years. It certainly caused me trauma I'll have to deal with for the rest of my life and has had me contemplating suicide many, many times. And from my research 4 years ago, I'm far from alone in having suicide as my first thought when finding this out. When I listened to how they talked about this, frankly, I was angry, upset, and a little depressed. Clearly, I've danced around the exact situation as I've not fully felt comfortable saying it, which makes it difficult to create awareness about it.
So, Corey, I care so much that I actually went and did the research on this, listened to both episodes in full, and I'm pretty sure it was Big D and Carrie, but I was on the episode. It was the Halloween episode. And what we talked about, I think what you're talking about, I could be wrong, is the fact that a dude was having sex, then he was like out of there really quickly. And we said it seemed like it went really quickly. Maybe he, prematurely ejaculated, and then he wanted to get out of the scene as quickly as possible, and that's what happened. So I want to point out, one, that I think all of us, and I've said on multiple pods before, that all of us in our teen years in particular had this fear. It was like beat into your head by every movie, every song, every ad, every conversation you had in high school, junior high, elementary school even, is like, don't come too soon, right? As a dude. And Big D and I talked about that, I think 2 episodes ago or 3 episodes ago, the pressure, right? As a guy. And so totally recognize that. And I certainly didn't mean to bring back any old trauma. But I think in that sense, we weren't necessarily saying like this guy is an embarrassment, more that guys often feel shame when premature ejaculating, and then you might want to get out of there because you feel ashamed.
And again, I haven't gone back and listened to it. In the scene we're talking about, the very beginning of Halloween, Michael Myers' sister meets the boyfriend at the door. She goes upstairs and maybe 15 seconds passes. We then see her putting her bra back on and he's leaving like he's just finished. So it wasn't even like they had like sex. We were like, what the hell just happened? Did they do it? I don't remember making fun of that, but are we sure? Did we talk about like maybe just the erectile dysfunction, or did we definitely?
No, it was definitely blowing your load too quickly.
I don't want to poo-poo somebody's feelings. Everybody kind of takes their own insecurities and they react differently. But I mean, it happens.
Yeah, I think the way to summarize this is that we're not saying you should be ashamed of premature ejaculation. What we're saying is that he may have prematurely ejaculated and therefore felt ashamed and run away. Right? It's a little difference there. I would never make fun of somebody for blowing their load too quickly. And in fact, on I think 2 episodes ago is when I talked about how I would applaud a person for coming too quickly, and it should be something you should be proud of in an age of efficiency. I had a girlfriend once who would apologize if she came too quickly, and I was like, no, that's awesome. Like, let's get the fucking show on the road. Let's go.
Oh, the worst for me is talking dirty. Dirty talk gets me going down the train. I can't stop.
Oh, man.
Or when they put their foot on a nearby object, a wall, like somebody's face. That'll get you.
Fuck me harder, though. That does me in, because then I'm just like, oh!
You're going to get so many voicemails, Big D.
Or you could
about
just
what?
follow directions.
It's not that
That
easy.
is the
again.
directions.
Again, you don't understand the performance anxiety.
Oh
If you know what, your performance, regardless of whatever you do, you will perform.
I just think I'm learning that I'm like the best in bed out of the entire group on this podcast based off of the issues that you all are sharing with having sex week after week. Gene encouraging people to come quickly, encouraging himself to come quickly, you not being able to do dirty talk. No.
Yeah, this is the contest, though. Big D and I have to hike a mountain. You have to go down a fucking water slide.
Oh,
Yeah, good job water
both.
sliding, Ash.
Fuck you both.
Yeah. What
You
if?
have
What
no
if? Let's
idea
just
the effort.
let's
You
just
have no
the
idea.
effort. The
You have
effort.
no idea.
The effort. You open your legs
Again, then you know what you're doing. You got to fucking starfish. Then we've talked about starfishing on this podcast. I am not a motherfucking starfish. So
Corey, I hope that helped.
I don't think it did at all.
But no, seriously, man, I'm glad you're still around. Suicide is a very serious thing. And I hope that we, didn't cause any problems. And I hope that this explanation helps a little bit, because I'm not making fun of anybody for coming too soon. It's simply that we thought it was funny that the dude decided to bolt, and we're trying to think of reasons why.
Yeah, listen, suicide is it's final. Dude, I'm saying it's not, no matter how bad stuff can be, take your time. Seriously, don't make a rash decision. I always said if I ever got to that point in life, I would just go buy a motorcycle and just start driving. Clear your head. Just think, because things always seem the darkest before the dawn. I know it sounds corny, like a Hallmark card, but really, shit that you think about your life, there are hard times that you thought would never end. One day they do.
There's a season to everything.
Yes, that's true. And that season, actually, we're getting into here is summertime. So our movies in July, they're good movies, but they're not exactly that one perfect movie. So one of our listeners, Scott H., wrote in and he said, "Summer's coming. I want to make a very special commission." So we want to thank Scott H. for commissioning this July our summer officially Shat Beach movie, One Crazy Summer from 1986. So that will be our special podcast coming out in July, and we want to thank Scott H. for the special commission.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Scott. Big D, speaking of upcoming movies, what do you have coming up next?
So, Gene, next week, we are doing a movie that completes a trilogy. It is the final chapter where Marty McFly obtains a 70-year-old message from the time-traveling Dr. Emmett Brown, in which he informs Marty that he has retired to a small town in the Old West. Marty then finds out that the doc was murdered shortly after the letter was sent. In order to save his friend, Marty will have to travel back in time, disentangle a love-struck doc from a local school marm, and repair the DeLorean, all while avoiding a posse of gunslingers. This was commissioned by Steve W., directed by Robert Zemeckis, and I want to go out on a limb here and say this one isn't the weakest of the trilogy, even though a lot of people think it is.
I agree.
So it'll be interesting to see. So tune in for that.
Thank you, Steve W., for that upcoming commission. Thank you, Scott, for One Crazy Summer. And most of all, thanks, Lachlan, for commissioning Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man from all the way down in regional Australia. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. You can email us, host@shatthemovies.com. or call us at 914-719-SHAT and leave a voicemail. You can support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, completing a free anonymous survey to help attract advertisers, buying our merch, or by commissioning your own movie. Find all that information by visiting our website, shatthemovies.com. And thank you to all the people, including Jen, who have made recent purchases from the Shat store. Really appreciate it. Love seeing all that Shat merch out there in the form of mugs and t-shirts and stickers. You can also check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all the information on our website, shatontv.com, wherever our fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by iTunes, please be sure to leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D and Ash, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us next week for the following movie.